So you've just got back from an epic manta snorkel, or you've been lucky enough to sight one on one of your excursions, and you're wondering, is it a reef manta or an oceanic manta? Well, today we're back with another video exploring the differences between the two species. So hello guys, and welcome back to another video where we are going to discuss the differences between the two species of manta ray, the reef manta and the oceanic manta. Now just before we start, I just want to say that there's possibly 3 species of manta ray globally, but right now one of them is not officially described. So we are going to concentrate on the 2 officially described species of manta ray, the reef manta and oceanic manta. Now, if you've been lucky enough to snorkel or dive with mantas somewhere in the world, such as the Maldives or Indonesia, chances are you have snorkel or dive with a reef manta ray. They are typically more common in shallow water habitats where we are in the water also, so shallow coral reefs for example. Now, reef mantas are smaller than their oceanic cousins. They grow to around 4 meters across, so they're still big animals. Females get to around 4 meters across, males get to around 3 meters across. Now, even though they are typically associated more with coral reefs and shallow water habitats, they are actually some of the deepest diving reef fish. We have tagged mantas and documented deep dives of over 600 meters. Now in future videos we will be discussing everything to do with tagging and the data and some of the things we're finding, so please stay tuned for those. Now oceanic mantas are much larger. Female oceanic mantas can get up to 7 meters across, and they are typically more associated with deep water habitats, so offshore pinnacles and close to continental shelves. But they are still found in shallow water environments as well. In Indonesia and even in Fiji, we have sites where you can interact with oceanic mantas in very shallow water. So we've established there's a difference in size between the mantas, oceanic mantas being bigger than reef mantas, and we've established some general habitat preferences, but we will come back to that in more detail soon. However, there are some key characteristics to look for underwater when you see the mantas, or even on the surface when you see the mantas, to work out is it a reef manta or an oceanic manta, regardless of the size. There's some differences in the markings. So on the back of the body, on the dorsal surface, both manta rays show white shading. That's unless it's a black morph, but we'll talk more about black morphs in a minute. Now, the white shading is different between each species. Now, reef mantas have what we say is like a Y-shaped shading on the top of the body, and it's not that well defined. It's quite a messy type of shading. Whereas an oceanic manta has very clean right-angled triangles shaded in white. So it looks like a black T on the shoulder markings. It's very clear the difference there. Now, there is also a slight difference in the body shape as well, and also oceanic mantas have a vestigial spine at the back of the body, but that's quite hard to see a lot of the time underwater. Now, so when you see a manta from this top on the surface, you can look for those different markings. And if you see a manta underneath, which is a lot of the time when you're scuba diving, because a manta might come over the top of you, you can look up and you can see differences in their ventral surface as well, their underneath side. So reef manta rays show spots between the gills. Oceanic mantas do not show spots between the gills. Both mantas will have spots on the lower portion of their ventral surface. However, oceanic mantas have a dark shading to the posterior margin, whereas reef mantas do not have that. And oceanic mantas typically have dark shading around the mouth as well, whereas reef mantas do not have that. So there are some subtle differences to look for underwater if the size isn't immediately apparent, because normally you don't see oceanic and reef mantas together, so the size doesn't clearly just jump out at you straight away. You have to normally look at the markings to work out which manta you're seeing. Now, melanistic mantas are completely black. Both species come in a melanistic form. So the normal coloration of a manta ray we would call a chevron form, and the black mantas we call melanistic. Now, melanistic is from a genetic trait where there is a production of melanin in the skin cells, so more of a production than the chevron. So the mantas come out totally black. It's exactly what happens in leopards when you get black panthers, I guess they're called. It's exactly the same thing going on. and it's very rare underwater actually, so mantas are one of the only species, if not the only species, that shows this trait. So melanistic mantas do not have any white shading on their dorsal surface, both reef mantas and oceanics, but underneath, reef mantas will have a white shading between the gills and you will see black spots through that white shading. However, oceanic mantas will not have black spots. They have a white patch in the middle, and they might also have white that goes on to the lower part of the ventral region. So we have differences in how big they are, we have differences in general habitat use, and we have differences with how they look. And we also have differences of how they act. So manta rays as a whole, they have the largest brain to body ratio of any fish, which means they're highly curious and charismatic underwater. They're fantastic animals to spend time with, and that's why they're so popular to swim with all around the world. Reef manta rays are curious, and having said this, manta rays differ individually. So even within reef mantas, which we encounter more in the water, you will have reef mantas. I'm going to use Coco as an example. I'll put some footage of Coco up now. So Coco, when we see Coco in the water, we know, especially if she's feeding, we know we're going to have an amazing experience. She does have her days where she's not so interactive, but most of the time she is an amazing manta to spend time with. And I've had one of my most amazing experiences with Coco in the water, one of my most amazing manta experiences. There's also another manta, Ngase, who's also a fantastic manta to spend time with. Then other mantas are very shy. We have a manta called Chai Latte. Don't ask about the name, but that's his name. And he's very shy. If we come across him, it's hard to even get his identification shot sometimes because he's quite timid and quite shy around people. So mantas differ individually, and that's true with oceanics as well. But reef mantas generally aren't as curious as oceanics, and reef mantas can be very curious. But oceanics can take it to a whole nother level. They can come over you wanting your bubbles on their ventral surface, as it obviously might feel good. They can also almost interact and play with you. They can do somersaults around your whole body. Whereas reef mantas, well, I've never seen a reef manta do that. So they differ in how they act as well. So hopefully now you're armed with the broad brush differences between both manta species, which means if you see a manta on a drone, from a boat or underwater, you hopefully can tell the difference between the two, even if they're not together to see size. Because size is very hard underwater. I mean, I'm guilty of it many times, but a lot of people come back from being underwater, from seeing a manta or a shark, sometimes even turtles, but a manta especially. Some people come back and they've just seen a reef manta, and they'll come back and say it was like 6 meters across, where in actual fact that manta may have only been 3.5 to 4. Everything looks bigger underwater, and so when you see mantas, they can look especially large, and your size estimation is skewed. So now you know the difference is how they look, so you can be able to tell which manta you see. So once again, thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when we next release another video. And if you have any questions about either species of manta ray, please put them down in the comments below and we'll get back to you and answer those questions. And if you see a manta, let us know in the comments what your experience was like, because these are incredibly special animals to swim with. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this, and until next time, see you soon.